Greetings, this is Terry Paulding. I'm coming to you from Paulding & Company, a creative kitchen in Emeryville, California, and today I'm going to show you how to cut an onion. This is your standard yellow onion, but what I'm going to show you will work for white onions, it'll work for shallots, which are just sort of in miniature, any onion that you find, red onions, whatever. So the first thing I want to talk about is the anatomy of an onion. It has, of course, a root end that was in the ground and a stem end that was coming up and eventually would form a flower and seeds and reproduce. But the whole onion is attached to this root. So for cutting an onion is the most important part. If it has a lot of extra loose skin on it, these onions are dried, of course, then you want to take the extra off just to make it easier to handle. So here we have our onion. We've got the root, the stem end is cut off, and you have a flat surface, which is really important. When I'm cutting, I like to have a flat surface, because if you try to cut this in half now and you're putting it on the round, you're endangering cutting yourself. It's also important to hold your knife properly. You want to have a finger and thumb on the blade in front of the handle and then the 3 fingers underneath. And this is a chef's knife. It has a bolster, which means when you cut with it, you're not wrapping your knuckles on the table. A sharp knife is always better than a dull one, and especially for cutting onions, because the reason you cry when you're cutting an onion is that instead of cleanly slicing through, you're mashing the cell walls and the volatile chemicals. Actually, I've seen this on photography, on very slow-mo photography. It just comes up and all these little droplets are coming up and hitting you in the eye, and that's why you're crying. So you have your root still attached, you have your stem off, you can then cut your onion in half, right through the middle. And that leaves every bit of the onion attached to the root. And it also makes it easier to peel. Unless I'm making onion rings, I always cut them in half before I peel them. All right, so you want to make diced onions. And we'll start with just a regular half-inch dice. All you do is you take your knife and you angle it and you cut through to the root, but not through the root. So you can see I'm stopping here before I get to the root. And then you have the whole onion. You can see that all the pieces are cut, but it's holding together perfectly. Then you can just turn it over. And when I use this hand, I like to not cut with my fingers straight out, but I like to put them this way, because you have much less to cut off if you miss with your knife. We don't do that very often, but then you're just cutting through here. And when you get down to the end, okay, I don't have anything to hold on to here, so flip it down and make one cut this way, and then you can flip it back, and now you have a surface to hold, and you can make that last cut. So here we have diced onion. It's basically an even half-inch dice, and it happens very easily and very quickly, and you notice that I'm not crying. Okay, so we have our other half of the same onion, and what I'm going to do is show you how to make it finely diced. And there's one more little trick to do that, which is you take the onion and you want to put it close to the edge of the table because it's easier to handle there. And you want to make sure your wrist is straight. When you're cutting, if you're trying to do something like this, if you have this up here and you want to cut it, it's very awkward. It's much easier if you're conscious of your posture and move your body so that you can keep your wrist straight, or move the product so you can keep your wrist straight. So you find the angle you feel comfortable working at, and then you just make cuts parallel to the board. A few cuts through the onion. Depends on how big. It depends on how big or small you want the dice, how far apart your cuts are. And then you can just turn it around and do what we talked about with the first half onion, but a little closer together. So for this one, I'm going for about oh, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch dice. And then you turn it around and you simply cut through. And there you have neatly diced onions. And you can see right here that they're much smaller than the others. And here's, I'll give you a little example of how different they look. This is coarsely diced, about 1/2 inch. This is finely diced, closer to 1/8 of an inch. And you would use those for different things. If you want the onions in a sauce and nice and neat, you might want to make them smaller. If you're putting them in a soup, you might want to make them bigger. So, the other thing you're wondering is about just slicing them. Slicing an onion for a stir fry. And I have another 1/2 onion here that I'm going to show you. And the technique for that is extremely easy. You could, of course, slice across and make rounds that way, but the easiest way to do it is to simply angle your knife, cut through just the same way we were doing for the finely diced onion, all the way up to but not through the root, and then you have everything holding together. Turn it around the other way and cut the whole root off, and then you have a nice sliced onion that's ready to go in a stir fry. So there's 3 different ways to cut an onion.